Hey Lolo, I'm going to take a look at some of your music this week. I hope you're having fun with the choir. So we're going to look first at your Allegro in G major. So last week, I think we were doing a fair bit of it hands separately. And I'm sure some of it's going pretty well, a little bit hands together. So just trying to make sure that the rhythm stays good and that things don't sort of downfall into, with difficulties, especially in the third line. So I believe last week we talked about where to put them hands together. And you might want to write in the lines to show that where they go together. I think you can see that it's a rhythmic pattern with the way they work. So we have one E and then together on the two E and a 1, 2, 1 E and 2 E and a 1, 2. So it's like a little sequence almost. And here, the left hand and the right hand move together in a slightly more complicated fashion. You can see that they come in, they're not here. 1 E and a 2 E and 1 E and a 2 E and a. So it's really making sure that they get together, right together as the left hand plays the D, the E, and the F sharp. And the right hand plays the F sharp, the G, and the A. I think you can see that they're both just going together. So I'm just going to play it in the same octave, but it's really just going to be like this. So this is essentially how these two parts work here. So the left hand plays the F, and then the right hand plays the. And so when they work together, they kind of sound like this. Okay. So again, it's hard for me to do that with one hand just because of the distance between the two of where the hands play. So that's a little bit tricky putting it together, and some of my students have a bit of difficulty with that. Here our hands are just together, right together on the 1 E and 2 E and then together here on the D's. And we play our 6th, remembering that the bottom note is sharp, and then the left hand comes down and plays that low D because we're into the bass clef. See, the left hand is staying in the bass clef. So again, we have a little sequence here. Just the way the opening one started, we have a rhythmic and a pattern sequence. So our left hand in this first two measure group is keeping that D pretty static, and the lower voice of the left hand is moving down from C to B to A to G to F sharp to G. So the moving part. And then when we add the D, I think you can hear that lower line. And then at measure 11 here, same pattern but on the F. So you can really hear that lower line going. It makes it sound really neat because while the left hand line is going down, you can see the right hand line is going up. And they're together really just on the places where they're on an obvious place to be together, because 1 E and 2 E and then here we have our descending line. Watching for the articulation here, we've got a 2-note gesture. These are called sighing gestures. You want to make sure that at the end of a 2-note gesture you lift. So it's going to sound like this. And up here. often a note that troubles people. I think you wrote it in your score, but it's A, C, E, and a scale coming down from E. So we know we've got a scale that comes down from E to D, and we know that F is sharp. And if you keep in mind we're coming down from E to D and F is sharp, it frees you up to think more about what's going on in the left hand. Watch out for the left hand tie, so while the right hand plays the D, the left hand is tied. And here's a D, and the next note you're going to hear is actually only a step lower than that D. And just the way we talked about last time, remembering that this note here, this B, is only one step lower than that C. Okay, so for this week, I'm not sure how well you've got this piece going together. So for this week, it would be nice if it was steady. You can do small sections, putting them together, making sure they're really good. And if you're feeling good about how it's moving together, I'd sort of try to make sure that those two-note gestures were in place and that we had a really sort of a steady. Steady quality, even though it's going to be allegro, it would be really nice to hear it with a sort of slower, steadier quality. Getting it hands together, making sure that the left hand and the right hand work together. As I said, a little extra attention, hands together here. I think you have a good idea of what it's supposed to sound like now. And then a little bit at the end, just keeping in mind how close the hands are once you're here. Okay, I think it's going to sound great. Looking forward to it. The other piece that you're doing is the melody on page 30. We did a fair bit of work on this last week. Let me just get the page. You can have a look at my animals over there while I find page 30 over here. The Melody by Alexander Tansman. And last week we sort of broke it apart and took a look at the upper melodic line where the long notes are. And I had you play through the melody line so you could really hear it. And then I had you take a look at the accompanimental line so you could see that we had a third here, and then the second, and then the third, and then moving down to this third here, and then this diminished fifth, and then this third here. And I was commenting on the fact that it's really nice that the key signature doesn't have any sharps or flats in it, because it makes it a lot easier to just read those accidentals. Be very careful about looking to see which note is actually modified by an accidental, because things like this do look unclear. It is confusing to know which one is sharp. But I think whenever you look in the middle of the sharp and you see that the line is going through that square in the middle, then you'll know that it's the G sharp that's in the melody line. Try not to be too worried by natural signs. Try to get comfortable with natural signs, because they're always going to be a white note, so they're really helpful. So I'm not sure how far you got with this piece. I don't know what kind of week you had. We're going to take a look at the left hand, because that's something we didn't look at last week. Some very basic shapes. We have a fifth, we have a sixth, we have a fifth, we have a sixth, and then we have this low E, and then we have a fourth, and then we have a fifth, and then we have this A here, and then we have a second, and then we have a fourth. So you can see here we've got this consistent A, and we're in A minor, so it makes sense. We've got a tonic note there to start with. And then you can see E, 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 E as our grounding note, and that's our dominant note. So we're really governed by some very simple harmony. So left hand, fifth to A, sixth to A, fifth to A. A becomes the lead note, and then to our low E for our dominant, E, fifth to E, A. and then our second to the E, and then our fourth to the E. So I'm not doing this rhythmically, so I don't think that's the rhythm. I'm just trying to show you the intervals to get comfortable, because there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of accidentals, and there's a lot of ledger lines, and I know that there are often challenges to do. So here, very much like the opening, our fifth to A, our sixth to A, our fifth to A, with a little bit of a change. Here you can see we've got F, and as we change our clef, you can see we have an F here as well. So these two notes are an octave apart, but it's an octave up. So because we've changed clef, this is at bass F, and this is F above middle C. So our left hand's going to look like this. There's our F, and here's our clef change F. And then our next note is that G. That makes sense? I'm sure it does, once you see the score and once you try it out. So there's that G I was talking about. Now, it looks like you have to hold that G while you play that A and that G. I'm not sure if you can. It's a ninth. If you can't hold it, don't worry about it. You might also consider adding these notes to the right hand, but it might break the pattern and make you feel uncomfortable, so I'm not going to make you do that. So you can let go of that G if you want, and then play that A and that G, like this. Or you can reach it and hold it and make your thumb go down. Okay. The other option I said was to try it with your right hand, which would mean you'd have to stretch out, which would be pretty uncomfortable because you got to hold that G. But as I said, I don't really know the size of your hands right now, so I'm not sure what you'd be comfortable with. Just throwing out some options there for you on this piece. Anyway, we're here, watching out for the clef change here. So we got our fifth here, we have a sixth here, C on the bottom. We have a fifth here, fourth here. So this is less pattern based here. So be more careful about reading the notes. Fortunately, we have this repetitive G holding us together here in the right hand to grab onto. Okay. I think you can see here really nicely repetitive in that left hand part. We have this distance here, which is a fourth from D to A, and it repeats. And then we have D to G, D to G. So we've got a nice note that keeps, that's a through line, that D, and then just the A going down to the G. We have a C to a C down a fourth, a B to a B down a fourth, an E to an E down a fifth. Here you can see we're back to something that looks awfully similar to our opening. And the piece is done. So, you know, this piece can really benefit from careful practice, carefully looking through the notes, realizing when there's been, when there's holding notes and melodic notes, and realizing when the left hand comes in, when there's clef changes and those things. The piece is really not that much of a challenge once you get past reading the accidentals. I think it's going to be quite beautiful for you, and certainly quite a manageable piece. Wouldn't mind looking over something new with you, particularly a sonatina of some kind, just because it's really good for getting some comfortable 16th notes happening. So there's a couple of them that are really quite pretty. And not too long is really what I'm looking for. I'm quite fond of this one. This one's pattern based. B section. And then it returns to the A section part. So that's one idea. That's the sonatina in B flat on page 10, or the little scherzo on page 11 from Haydn, just because they're both short, so they work really well. So this is a scherzo. Scherzo is the Italian word for a joke, which makes it kind of fun. This is a very famous piece of music. Again, working on those 16th notes, quite repetitive, because just like the last sonatina that I showed you, the A section comes back. So there's not a lot of new material in the piece. And then this contrasting B section. And then the A section comes back. As if nothing happened. Okay, I hope that gives you enough to work on. I look forward to hearing you